He talked a lot about the economy. He specifically talked about gas prices, asking the room at one point, doesn't everybody just agree that gas prices are lower? So this was a pretty unprecedented even for the president of the United States, but it was clear that I'm fairly certain he didn't come out there with any prepared remarks. He was holding up the same packet that he had given all of us. All of the reporters had gotten a packet that said something along the lines of 365 days and 365 accomplishments. I'm paraphrasing there. And he just seemed to at times kind of look down, read one of the bullet points, and then elaborate on it. Again, it didn't seem as though this is from any kind of script, but just things that were on his mind. Again, a lot of it was grievances that he felt like he wasn't getting credit for some of the things that were in that packet.
All right. Kristen Holmes, thank you very much for that report. Best of luck the rest of the day of your day at the White House. My panel is here in the arena. CNN political analyst, investigative reporter at the New York Times, David Fahrenthold, CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel, former communications director for the DNC, Mo Alithi, and the former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence, Mark Short. We're also joined by CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger. I want to dig in with David on Greenland in just a moment, but Jamie Gangel, I kind of want to start with the big picture of what today was like. You know, I was flashing back to the press conference he gave. It was probably the first couple months of his first term. I was covering Capitol Hill, and we all sort of stopped to watch what happened. And then I tried to talk to Republicans in the hallway and say, hey, did you see that news conference that we all can't stop talking about? And they just walked right by me and said, nope, never seen it. You fast forward to now, the president is using some of the same tactics that he's always used for all this time in public life. But frankly, his posture was a little different. The energy was a little bit different. Right. What were your takeaways?
So it was, to use one of his favorite phrases, low energy. But it did go on forever. It was Fidel Castro-like. And
wow.
Several people texted me, 1 year down, 3 to go. There's, the Trump exhaustion, Trump chaos. And then, people talk about looking at his polls, which are going down, and the White House has lost independence. You have to ask some questions. Does he care about his legacy? What is the goal? When he said to me, he's going to help NATO on the same day when it appears he's going to bring an end to NATO by insisting on owning Greenland.
It's like a record.
I'm confused.
So,
Mark Short, you've been in rooms. You've been behind that podium while you've seen this president do a version of this. By behind it, I mean behind those walls in the communication offices. And yes, you have. What do you think that we saw today from him? And, if you're trying to sort through what of this matters and what of it doesn't, I mean, what would you point to?
Well, look, I think that honestly, Casey does have a lot he can talk about after the first year. I think he's right that he's lowered energy prices. He's right he struck Iran. He's right about Maduro. But, he's often his own worst enemy. Sometimes those successes are the ones he steps on with new messages and new storylines. And I think that the whining gets kind of tiring for a lot of people to continue to whine about I'm not getting enough credit for these things. They want to know, what are you doing actually to lower everyday prices today? So, yes, I think he does have a lot that he can talk about, but unfortunately, he's the one often changing the storyline.
He's a little bit self-indulgent.
Just saying.
David Sanger, I want to bring you into this conversation. Anyone who hasn't already read your excellent piece in the New York Times today about the off-ramp you say that Trump has with Greenland. He doesn't seem to want it. Can you kind of update us based on what we just heard in the last couple of hours, what he had to say about Greenland there and how it fits into your thinking about this?
Well, he did, Casey, sound a little bit less strident. And, he said everybody's going to be happy out of this, right? NATO and the United States. The question is, does he mean that he's going to force a change of ownership and then tell them that they are going to be happy about it? Or is he going to look for one of those off-ramps and try some other way of resolving this? There's an easy one that's out there. There was a treaty signed in 1951 by Harry Truman. It's never gotten much examination in the ensuing 70-something years until recent weeks. But the fact of the matter is, it allows the United States to build whatever it wants on those 15 or 16 bases that we had in Greenland during World War II and in the Cold War, and then abandoned because we thought that the place was basically strategically irrelevant. It's not strategically irrelevant anymore, but you could solve the problem and solve every defensive issue that he's raised without changing ownership. Now, what he didn't say was what he said to us nearly 2 weeks ago in the New York Times interview that was even longer, believe it or not, than that press conference, in which he said he just has a psychological need to own it rather than to lease it. And if that's the case, then there's no room for negotiation.
I was going to say, I mean, we've seen over the years what that has meant, and David Farenthold, you've covered it extensively. How would you interpret the way David just framed that? The president has a psychological need to own Greenland, so we may be in for the United States owning Greenland no matter what.
I mean, I feel like what we saw today was a sort of a sign of how fragile Trump's psychology can be. At this moment, I would have said yesterday he was at his most confident. He was showing all this confidence after taking out Maduro, pushing Venezuela around, threatening Greenland. He seemed so confident. And then today in this press conference, he seemed crestfallen. He seemed sort of like he'd lost a lot of his confidence. It shows that sort of a lot of what moves him is not morality or laws or whatever, but popularity. He wants to be popular. I think that's one of the biggest restraints on his behavior, and none of what he's doing right now is that popular.
So let's walk through some of that. Mo Alithi, I'll give this one to you. It's a little bit of a softball to our Democrat at the table because you guys are going to have to run against him in the midterm elections. But if you look at Trump's, and let's stick with Trump's foreign policy decisions, since this is what we've been talking about for the last couple of days, of the people that we